Hello my dear friends, how are you? I'm Ari Thurger and today I'm going to share with you another divination method. And this one today is another of my own creation. It's a sort of a little game, or perhaps you could see it as a method to determine the final result with more accuracy, or at the very least to have a more precise outcome. I've created this method to find the Mystery Rune to be applied on another video, the one I've shown you in the previous video. I'm not sure if you have watched the previous method, which was the 10 runes layout method. In any case, perhaps it is better to revise that little part on the previous video and then return to this one, if you please. Now, on this rune, some other time I will show you another method of my own creation, which is to specifically reveal a mystery rune, one mystery rune, through a very simple process. I don't know when I'm going to do a video on that method, but if I ever have the chance to make it, you can always first use that other method to reveal a mystery rune, one mystery rune, and then use that rune and place it on the position of the last rune of this method, and as such you add two processes or methods of divination in this case that will give you a little more reassurance, so to speak. So this is what we are going to do today, using a method to find the mystery rune, and that same rune is to be placed on the other method, the 10 runes layout method I presented previously. A rune to be placed as the last rune of that same method. I'm going to show you here on the screen the layout of this particular method we are dealing with here today. There are 14 positions, but we will only really work through 13. And it's those 13 positions that will determine the mystery rune, the final rune in the 14th position. Pause the video here if it will be easier for you to observe the structure of this method. Now, for this method, you will need the conventionally accepted sequence of the Elder Futhark. Those are the runes we are using here. But we will also be guided by that sequence. I, for one, prefer to use the sequence which ends with the rune Deigas. It makes sense to me, but of course you may use it as you wish and as it feels more comfortable to you or what calls to you. After all, divination is much more about the creation of a meaning through the interpretation of what is observed. Remember that. So, I'm going to put here on the screen the generally accepted sequence of the Elder Futhark, ending with Deigas as a personal choice. We will then proceed to take one single random rune, and that's the only random rune we shall have. Well, we then have Nauthis, which we shall place on the position number 1, and the game begins from this point. We shall focus on the column of the left side, where we have the even numbers, the pairs, and the column on the right, which are the odd numbers. Let's take a look at the position of Nauthis, the rune we have randomly picked, and let's find it within the sequence of the Elder Futhark. To the left of it, we have a rune. To the right of it, we have, of course, another rune. So we will move one position to either sides of Nauthis to find the runes in the position 2 and 3, position left and position right. And if I'm not mistaken, the runes are Hagalas and Isa. I will now try to find them in the pile of runes, so let's move this forward, please. Right. Now we have the first runes of the first position on the left and the first position on the right. To determine the next runes, the one from the left and the one from the right, right below the runes we already have here, we shall proceed with the same sequence, and looking at the Elder Futhark position of each rune, we can then determine which is the rune on the left of Hagalas and which one is the rune on the right of Isa. For Hagalas it will be Wunyo, right? And for Isa, I don't remember because I don't recall the sequence from memory when doing this method, starting from a random point in it. I remember, it's Yera. I hope. So let's find them again in the pile and place them on the right positions. Now we shall do the exact same thing 4 more times from this point. On the left, it will always be the rune on the left of the previous rune, according to the accepted sequence of the Elder Futhark, of course. And on the right, it will always be the rune that stands on the right of the previous rune in the position above the one we want to find. So, on the left of Wunjo, we shall then have Geibo, and on the right of Yera, we shall have a rune that I'm seeing it in my head, but I don't remember the name. I want to say Perthro, but it's actually the one before that one. Let's move on and find them. Right, it's Ewas or Ewas. I've just checked it. My mind today is a little bit fuzzy. Anyway, we shall continue with this just the same way we did previously. So allow me to already choose the right runes for their rightful positions, please. So here we are now. The sequence is almost complete. All we need to do now is to find the Mystery Rune. As you can see here, on the left of Geibo is Kan or Kinas. On the right of Ewas is Perthro. On the left of Kan, it's Raido. On the right of Perthro, it is Alice. On the left of Raido is Ansos, and finally on the right of Algis is Suelo. So we have it all determined in this little and simple game. Now, to determine the Mystery Rune, we will focus on the last runes of this sequence, the one in position 12, which is in the left, and the one in the position 13, which is the one on the right. They are thus Ansos and Suelo. Now, we shall invert things. We will walk to the right of Hansos and we will walk to the left of Suelo within the Elder Futhark sequence. We will walk the same amount of steps to either side until we find the rune that stands in the intersection of the number of steps. For the sake of this video, as to not waste a lot of your time, I've already determined that the equal number of steps you have to walk from one rune to the next to find the rune where the same number of steps meet are 6 steps. So if you walk 6 steps to the right of Ansos, or forward, you will find Nauthis. And if you walk 6 steps to the left or behind or backwards of Suelo, you will also find Nauthis, and that's our Mystery Rune. For instance, let's walk 4 steps to either side, 4 steps forward from Hansos, you will find Wunjo, 4 steps backwards from Suelo, you will find Yera. The steps don't meet at an equal point, at an equal rune. So we try with 5 steps, and forward to Hansos you find Algalas, and backwards from Suelo you find Isa. Again, they don't meet at an equal point, and at this point you know the right steps are 6. 6 forward from Ansos you find Nauthis, and 6 backwards from Suelo you find Nauthis. Again, the number of steps is determined by the position of each of the last 2 runes, and you find the Mystery Rune where the same number of steps to either side will meet at the same rune. In case you are confused, let's do another one. And just in case you are thinking what happens if the first random rune you pick is Fehu, the very first rune of the conventionally accepted Elder Futhark sequence, how shall you move? Well, it's quite simple, and I've already took the liberty to lay out the runes for you to see. There they are. If Fehu is the first rune you pick, doesn't matter, the process doesn't change. On the left side you will always move 1 step to the left of the previous rune, and on the right side you will always move 1 step to the right of the previous rune. Since we have Fehu being the accepted rune to be positioned as the first of this sequence, you move to its left and you will go back and meet the last rune. And you shall thus start to move left from below, as if it were a circle. However, to the right of Fehu, the next rune is Urus. From here, you already understand what the next runes are. On the left side, always one step to the left of the previous rune. On the right side, always a step to the right of the previous rune. When you finally reach the last two runes, that's when you move in opposite directions, into the middle, to meet the Mystery Rune, which is the one where the same number of steps to either side will meet. In this case, we end with Hewas on the left and with Gaibo on the right. Elementary, my dear Watson. Also 6 steps to either side, towards the middle, the shortest course, which will be easier to determine. In this case, you don't have to actually invert. Now it's 6 steps backwards from Hewas and 6 steps forward from Gaibo. And why is this? Because not only we want to determine the same amount of steps to either side, where that number meets an equal position, and that position will reveal our Mystery Rune, which in the case is Hewas, but also we want to move through the shortest course towards the middle, not going all the way around towards the center of the other Futhark sequence as best as possible, if you take my meaning. Of course, you can play with this however you like. You can go the other way around. Instead of going towards the middle, you can very well move outwards. 6 steps forward, Hewas, you shall find Ferhu, and 6 steps backwards of Gaibo, you shall find Ferhu again, and your Mystery Rune becomes Ferhu instead. Make your choice, moving inwards or outwards. Perhaps you can determine your choice depending on what you wish to find on a rune. If you want a Mystery Rune to be more in line with a particular mood or a life's choice that you feel you are walking towards a central point in your life, then in this method move inwards. If you feel it's some sort of a escape, a change, a new outcome, perhaps move outwards. With this method, you can pretty much determine the Mystery Rune by the choice of the first rune. But it's just a fun way that will make you busy for a moment. You have certainly noticed that there's nothing magical here, nor complicated, and it's just very basic mathematics. Whatever rune you choose at the beginning, it will always be 6 steps inwards, and you find the exact same rune from the beginning. You will only find a different rune than that of the beginning if you go outwards, right? Well, not really. Actually, I'm sorry. That's not exactly true, and there's a very simple principle here, and this is where I want to go with all this explanation. The point of this method and today's video is actually to warn you about something. So, my apologies, my sincere and deepest apologies for all of this, but what I really wanted to show you is that some self-entitled runologists prey on people's despair and will make methods like this that are seemingly magical or very complex, but in truth it's just basic mathematics and a very basic principle. People in despair are often distracted and become easy targets. With a method like this in front of them, when they seek out help from a runologist in the moment of despair, the mind is often blinded or clouded and seeking out a greater meaning, something special that will take the person out of their reality that is causing them despair. Seeking to find a magical purpose, a meaning, a true and right answer coming from special supernatural means, which is perfectly natural. A runologist, which is in fact a scammer when they use methods like this and charge money, will most likely use basic mathematics, concoct a simple method to apply that basic mathematical sequence, give it a special meaning, even a sequence that looks like an important binding of runes, give it a mythological meaning, and that's it. Many people fall into these scams and pay an outrageous amount of money for this, especially through the internet, which even becomes easier to deceive the public if you lack honor, of course, and basic human decency and moral principles. It's not just basic mathematics, it's also a very simple sequence we are dealing with here. if you notice, you have certainly noticed, and I'll put on the screen with this method, if you choose any rune between Geibo and Berkanan as the first rune, the last rune will always be the one you have chosen if you go inwards. And I'll put this sequence in green. The ones you see in green, or with green dots, you can be sure that if you go inwards, the final rune is always the same as the first rune. Now, the other runes I'll put with red dots between Ferhu and Kanan and between Ewas and Degas. If these are the runes at the first position, then these are the exact same runes in the final position if you go outwards. You can try it for yourself, and please do try it for yourself. It's a very basic principle along with basic mathematics. So I could say that this method was Yggdrasil. We have the axis in the middle, the central pillar, and the tree itself is formed by Ingus runes, which is the seed, the rune connected to Ingus or Ing, the deity related to fertility, etc., etc. And the binding of these runes forms both upright and inverted Aries runes. And I could honestly make this look like something super mystical and give it a strong religious and esoteric spiritual mysticism to it. So, once again, my apologies, my deepest and sincere apologies if at the beginning and throughout this video I've made you feel that this was quite magical and a method with some real spiritual intuition to it. As I've called it at the beginning and throughout this video, this is a game of deception. And I wanted to share this message only at the end of this video precisely so we can start with feelings inclined to a more esoteric and even mystic predisposition. And at the end, the revelation, which certainly made many of you feel revolted, disappointed even, and perhaps even sad. So I apologize for that once again, but the lesson here is that it is important to remember these sentiments for the future, and to not let ourselves be deceived by our own fervent need to find the spiritual, because others will take advantage of it. The spiritual is often quite rational and logical, and by being rational and still being able to find the spiritual, that's when we know we are probably on the right track and not being deceived by our own feelings and desires that often ferments impulses that leads us to blindly fall into an abyss, from which it will be hard to get away from or get out of it, because in the first place we did not see it as an abyss, and we continued to pretend that it isn't so, because sometimes we don't want to accept our own errors, or we don't want to accept that we failed and we were wrong to believe in something, or that we were deceived. Be rational and attentive and know your feelings and desires. That's the true lesson here today. Be the ruler of your own mind, otherwise others will try to rule it, or even you yourself will end up delving deeper into despair and uncertainty, doubt, due to a blind desire of forcibly wanting to attain a spiritual meaning without having first exhausted all possibilities and explored all paths with a logical, rational thought focused on what you really want to achieve. As I said, divination is foremost finding a meaning through the interpretation of what is observed. So that's exactly what you have to do. Do not watch, observe. Alright, my dear friends, that's it for today. Once again, my apologies if this wasn't what you expected, but I want to help and prevent you from falling into a scam. These days, it's pretty easy to fall into one, especially given the fact that all of us are in a sort of lethargic state. We are in a current state of our modern societies of a massive existential crisis, especially due to how information all around the world hit us every day at any time and so quickly. And so we feel closer to others' problems, misfortunes, sorrow and death. We are in a situation of soul and mental survival, I think. Surviving all the terrible things happening in the world at every moment, and we get to know them on a daily basis, completely bombarded by information, which puts us into a long-term state of depression. It's a sort of collective trauma we are experiencing and a rapid flood of changes. We feel disoriented and disillusioned by daily conditions of life. That's what it is. In a way, it isn't that all bad, as this is pushing us to be more spiritual and far more attentive to the natural world all around us and the life in it. So we are in a process of awakening or reawakening the human soul or our deep spiritual senses in order to survive, of course. Not as an escapism, I think, but to strengthen our own existence as individuals, but also as a collective group in order to minimize as much harm and damage as possible. So all is not lost. There's still hope. But that's precisely the point. In this fervent need to rediscover our soul, our spirit, we often fall into spiritual scams, some of which of our own creation. And it's important to be attentive and observe even our own behaviors and what triggers our desires, where does it come from, and what leads us to have a certain impulse. We are left in the open, exposed, and if we are not careful, others will also want to take advantage of this situation. So, if this video left you with an outraged sense, perhaps even offended, irritated, and frustrated, remember those feelings and be careful. Be attentive to those who try to take advantage of you. There are many out there, unfortunately. Concerning divination with runes or reading the runes for someone, I have seen this quite a lot, even among certain YouTubers who certainly have a very entertaining channel or channels, but that's all it is, entertainment, often to give a religious or spiritual background to it as if enlightened by the gods themselves, which for some people it seems that these scammers are legit, and then they charge a ridiculous amount of money to read the runes for you when you can pretty much do that for yourself without losing your money. So that's it. I'm trying to help. Take it or leave it. Thank you so much for watching. See you on the next video. And as always, thank you for today.